Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video, and today guys we are going to be doing a deep dive on the new Imperial Guard Castellan model that's just been revealed by Games Workshop. Now, in case you missed it, GW has been showing off loads and loads of new guard stuff, and I have got several videos already up covering the new reveals. So I've got a live stream that's up that covers the reveals as they happen live on Twitch, so you get to see my live reaction, and that actually is my hot take on all of the new stuff that's come out. And then I also have got a deep dive that's gone on for the Cadia Stands box set, and that will be linked at the end of this video. And I'm going to be doing deep dives on all of the new reveals over the next few weeks and ongoing as GW reveals more and more stuff over the month. So how I tend to do these deep dives is I go through the model in minute detail, and then we take a look at any rules that have been previewed for the model. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Taking a look at the Castellan model first, then let's dive straight into this. This is a really cool new model for the Guard. I really like it. He feels very much like an officer. You see this guy, you know he is of the officer class. He just looks really cool. And so I think the overall aesthetic of the model for me, even with the sort of cringy tactical rock, is a big win. Diving into some more specifics of the model, we can see here that we've got a new kind of breastplate. If you take a look at the old Cadian breastplate, this is very different to it. And if you also take a look at the new shock troops and even the new officer in the command squad, the breastplate here is different to both of those. The regular Cadian breastplate doesn't have any of this finery on it, and the command squad officer has a gorget with an embossed wing skull on it, but not like this guy where it is embossed straight onto the breastplate itself. So that is an interesting minor difference between the two different officers. You can also see that this breastplate in general is of a finer design. So you can see it's got extra press studs, and it's also got a more pronounced lip around the outside, and you can see that on the main part of the breastplate. You can see it up here as well, and you can also see it on the smaller little bit of chest armor down here. Now, one thing that is missing from this breastplate is there is no extra bit of armor down here indicating carapace. So I would say that this guy is probably armed with just standard flak armor, but although he may come with some sort of improved invulnerable save over the standard Cadian command squad officer. Taking a look up here, you can also see he's got some finer shoulder pads. These are a design that we've not seen so far. So they are a much finer design with some gold sort of trim there than on the standard Cadian shock troopers, and it's also more fancy than anything we've seen on the command squad. Whilst all of the people on the command squad did have a shoulder canvas covering that denoted rank and speciality, this guy doesn't have a shoulder covering. He apparently has finely wrought shoulder pads, and these have actually got a skull with laurels printed on them. I actually really like this shoulder pad design. It very much, and this chest plate design, it very much harkens back to the old metal 2003-2004 command squad officer, who is one of my favorite models of all time, and GW have got many other hints and references back to that old model. So I think that's why overall I love it, because it really reminds me of those old school badass Cadian officers. Sticking with the chest area for a moment, we can see that we've got some sort of fancy cross strap here. I really like that. Reminds me of a World War I officer's cross strap, and you can also see moving down here that we have got a purple sash. Now, when I first saw this, I thought he looked a little bit like a wannabe commissar, but upon further inspection, and also thanks to some information provided to me by the Guard community, it turns out that purple sashes are actually very common in Cadian officers, the purple obviously being a reference to their unique eye colour and the Cadian gate. So I really like this sash. I also would mention a couple of other small details. We've got a fancy belt buckle here. This is not just the skull, it is a wing skull. So this is the first time we've seen this sort of fancy belt buckle, and we've also got some fancy lapels which the straps are going through. So overall, you can see this whole sort of area, including the sash, is just much fancier than we've seen on any of the other command squad models or on the regular shock troopers. Moving down, we've got the quintessential officer's coat, and you can see this is a slightly different design to the one in the command squad. It's more split open at the front, and it's also split open at the back. And we can also see that there is a scabbard hanging down from the belt here, and it actually is hanging quite low. And interestingly, this scabbard doesn't seem to be a mandatory option. We're going to be able to see some other loadouts for this guy in another picture just in a moment. And it looks like this scabbard might actually be an optional accessory. Now, I really like that because it means that his belt is going to have more space for other options and allows you to kit bash this model a bit, and you don't have to stick with a single fixed loadout. Another thing is that this pistol doesn't look like it is molded on. I think this is also something that you glue on as an optional extra. So it really just means that you can really pimp out this guy's belt however you want and kit bash it to your favorite sort of loadout. Taking a look at the weapon options here, we've got another really fancy chunky power machete slash saber. No double-edged swords in the guard. It's sabers all the way. Everyone knows that true men use sabers, not swords. Fancy also hilt here, a little bit fancier than the standard officer one. I would guess that. Finally got some hazard stripes on the power cable. One thing that I lamented in all of the other reveals we've seen so far is the lack of hazard stripes on power cables. But now that we can see them, that's just a nice little thing that I like to see. Bionic hand, something that I said wasn't in the Command Squad box set. So it's cool to see that we've got the bionic hand. That is definitely a throwback and a reference to the current Cadian Command Squad box set. Also got some fancier cuffs here with some gold trim, and then moving over here you can see we've got a fancier little bit on the pistol handle here, on the pistol grip, and also you can see that this is quite a chunky plasma pistol, very much in line with the current plasma pistol that we've got, but it does come with a sort of with a pre-holed barrel. Everyone will call that pre-drilled barrel, so that's really nice. It means you don't have to drill your own plasma gun barrels anymore, which just it's one less job to do, boys. So I'm really happy with that. One other thing to mention is the hat is a little small. GW's definitely been subduing the hats. They've not been having massive peaked caps on the officers anymore. I think that's a bit of a shame. Everyone knows that a guard officer's rank is, it's a bit like an orc. It's indicated by how big his hat is. So I would like to see some big hats come back. But it is cool that this is a bit of a smaller hat because it makes it look a little bit more realistic. One last little small detail to mention is we do have the tactical rock, and this guy does have the officer boots. There's no gaiters on his boots here. And then we've also got the standard sort of armor straps here as well that we've seen on other models. Now, taking a look at the other picture that GW showed off for this model, you can see that there is loads of opportunities to kit bash and change the loadouts on this guy. You can give him just a pointy finger and also a chainsword with a little las pistol on his hip. That looks to me like it's the most sort of cost-effective loadout there. If you're not bothered with this guy getting into any fights, you might as well have him where he can, you know, just direct people for as cheap as possible. I like on the chainsaw, there's a little eagle there. That's not something that we've seen before. A little wing, which is pretty cool. And then also you've got the classic pointy hand, and you've got a bolter loadout. So you might be able to have this guy do a little bit of long-range fire support, which is pretty nice. One thing that I think is interesting is that you can give him a bolter and a pointy hand, a chainsword and a pointy hand. But if you notice, the power sword, the melee weapon, is in the same hand as the bolter. So to me, that indicates that you get to give him some kind of melee weapon, or you get to give him the bolter sort of long range option, but not both. So I think gone are the days of bolters and power swords on sergeants and officers. Another thing to mention that's kind of interesting is he always seems to have this las pistol on the hip no matter what the loadout is. But that means that you could technically put a plasma pistol on his arm here and then have a bolter on his arm here and then have the pistol down here. That's kind of cool. Or you could also have, you know, if he just has two pistols, does that mean he gets to dual wield? Kind of interesting if like, no matter what, he always has some sort of las pistol on his hip. That would make it so that he would potentially have quite a bit of firepower with two pistols and a bolter. Don't know if that'll be a legal loadout, but it's certainly a way that you can build the model. Of course, we've also got a head swap up here, so you can see that we've got the classic Cadian with bionic monocle look. Really, really like that. Very much a throwback to the old 2004 Metal Officer. He's got that arrogant sneer on his face as well. Just really love that vibe and reminds me of the old model. And honestly, I think this guy is definitely going to be featuring in my any new models that I get, any sort of new army that I put together for the channel. Definitely going to be having some arrogant Castellans with all the different loadouts leading my forces forward. Small interesting note to mention, we've got a closer look at the power pack here, and we've also got a closer look at the embossed shoulder pad here, and also there's no bionic hand on these two, so the bionic on hand is apparently only for the power sword. Another thing to mention, not officer related, that we have got the another look at the sergeant with the auto gun with a drum mag in the background there, and also look at this beast hanging out in the background. I'm not talking about craggly faced Nork Dead Dog. That is a clear indication of the new Rogal Dawn tank. You can see some sort of demolisher cannon in the front, see some sort of sponson here poking out, and you can see the turret with some sort of coaxial autocannon on the side there. This one looks very much worse for wear. I suspect it's been destroyed for some sort of terrain piece, but that is definitely not a tank that we currently have in the Guard, either Forge World or in plastic. Now, I am going to be doing a video where someone from the community very kindly sent me a sort of like enhanced picture of that, where they've been able to extrapolate details using the I think some sort of AI to work out where the sort of full proportions of this model are. So I'm going to be doing a video on that so you can have a closer look at what the Rogal Dawn is potentially going to look like. Obviously, this one looks pretty battered, but we are getting more and more hints about the Rogal Dawn, and I suspect it's going to be one of the models that they show off next Monday, if not earlier. One other small detail is it does seem to be that we do have the classic Cadian Vox Grill helmet in the background there. So that's pretty cool. So overall, I'm feeling really positive about this new Castellan model. He is probably going to be sold separately. He is probably going to cost a pretty penny. I would suspect he's going to be about £15 for one of these guys. But if you only need one per detachment, then it might not be too bad. And what I would also say is you could certainly just kit bash this guy. I would say when I'm going to be picking these up, I'll probably just pick one up, so I've got that, you know, distinct sculpt in my collection, and then I'll probably just kit bash the rest of them using parts from the command squad. So now that we've taken a look at the model in fine detail, now let's take a look at some of the rules that have been previewed for it. So the first thing to mention is that the Castellan won't be going into battle accompanied by a retinue. That's a real shame. I really liked that Games Workshop have brought back officers and command squads together as one unit. It feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. It might make the model a little bit more cost effective. It might be that, oh well, the Castellan's only like 45 points running around, but a command squad is going to be like 60 or 70. It's like, okay, fair enough, it might be a more cost effective HQ option, but honestly, I really like the idea of just all officers running around accompanied by their retinue. So that does make me a little sad, although it might give us some flexibility in terms of gameplay. They've also mentioned that they will be issuing orders, and when we look down here, they also confirm orders as well. So there was some concern that there wasn't going to be orders in the Guard anymore. They were going to change them, but they certainly are going to be around. We'll come back to orders in just a little moment because we've got a couple of other little bits that I want to mention here, but I just thought I'd mention it. Orders are confirmed, guys. As well as orders, apparently Castellans are going to have auras as well. Now that's really interesting. I've always said that if you gave Guard auras, that would be a massive boost to us, because orders are great, but until recently you could only put them on 1 or 2 units at a time, which meant that you couldn't spread your buffs out as much by turtling up. Now it seems like not only do we get orders, we're also going to get reroll auras as well, which is massive. Now, one thing to mention here is it just says rerolls. It doesn't say reroll ones, it says rerolls. If this guy can give full rerolls to every core unit within range, that is frankly bonkers. If that is the case, I suspect that's going to get nerfed pretty quickly and will probably get taken down to just reroll ones in range, or it's going to be like a chapter master where he gets to pick one unit that rerolls everything and then everyone else rerolls once. But at the moment, it also obviously depends on how much stuff is going to get core in the Guard. I mean, at the end of the day, if they are very stingy with the core keyword, this guy might not be as useful. But if they start giving this out to like the new field ordnance batteries and heavy weapon teams and stuff like that, it's going to make a huge difference. If they give it to Lehman Russes and this guy can direct Lehman Russes, that's going to be massive. Hell, if they just give it to infantry squads, as primarily an infantry commander, I can tell you, if I could have my infantry squads running around now with orders and full rerolls to hit, that's like Lost Relic Acadia for everyone on steroids all the time, and that's massive. But assuming for a moment that it is just reroll ones, I think that is still a really, really powerful buff. Imagine if you were able to get first rank fire, second rank fire, and able to get reroll ones to hit on a unit of infantry, or in fact multiple units of infantry, without having to use things like laws of command. You could just guarantee it going off. There's just a lot of implications for this guy, and I think even if he just does reroll ones, and even if GW is a little stingy with the core keyword, I suspect, depending on his price point, he's probably going to be an auto include in most Guard armies. It just seems very, very strong. Now, moving down here, we have some hints about the new way that Guard officers and command structures are going to work. So it says that Ashbert Arm officers can boost the effectiveness of their guardsmen with orders, but the Castellan can issue 2 per turn. To me, that indicates that the command squad will only be able to issue one, and that the command squad is now going to take the place of the platoon commander, and that the Castellan is going to take the place of the company commander. From a gameplay perspective, that makes sense. From a fluff perspective, I'm not so hot about it. I mean, there are many different ranks of guardsman and officer in the Imperium. I mean, if you've just got all your officers lumped under, oh, this generic command squad led by an officer covers everything from a second lieutenant all the way up to a captain or a major or a colonel, that's kind of crazy. I mean, there are so many different ranks that can be covered within the guard. I would like to have seen GW go back to having many different kinds of rank in the command squad. Back in the day, you had junior officers, senior officers, and heroic senior officers. I would like to see that vibe return again. We don't know that is the case. It very well may be the case that command squads can take many different kinds of officer. It might be that you can take a cheap command squad with a junior officer who only is able to issue orders within a short range, but it's only one order, and then depending on the other ranks that you get, maybe you can issue them further distances. We just don't know, but at the moment the indication is that you will get an officer, and that's the one kind of officer rank that you get with his command squad. And then you also will get this Castellan, who seems to be some sort of roving support officer. So moving on, we've got the orders of a vital aspect of the war machine. And then they also mentioned, because obviously orders are confirmed again. And what I would say is they also give some hints to what orders can do. Encouraging units to hit harder. To me, that's not a reroll. That's not a reroll to hit sort of aura, because this guy already does rerolls to hit. So why would they have things overlapping like that? Hit harder, to me, it's not. They're not saying hit more accurately. They're saying hit harder. So to me, that indicates that we're going to get either a strength bonus to some weapons or all weapons that in the ordered unit, or we're going to get some kind of wounding mechanic. Now, it might be something as simple as you get reroll ones to wound. That's fine. It might be something amazing like +1 to wound against an enemy unit. Don't know how it's going to work, but hitting harder definitely indicates to me it's going to be on the wounding side of the game mechanics rather than the hitting side of the game mechanic. Another interesting one is that they say, and surge across the battlefield in mass human waves. That to me makes me think that move is going to be staying around in some capacity. That's a surprise. I know a lot of people that complain quite a lot about move, saying it's just you've got guards that are able to move faster than vehicles. I do get that. It is a little bit immersion breaking when you've got a guardsman that's sprinting past a chimera. But the thing is that move is such a quintessential guard tactic that taking it away would also feel wrong at this point. I'm not sure how they're going to implement it. I would suspect that instead of having move, advance again, they'll just say you advance, and when you advance, you go 6 inches rather than rolling for it. So your guardsman can go a maximum of 12 inches a turn rather than 24 inches a turn. That would be a shame, because obviously being able to surge across the battlefield 12 inches does give infantry guard a little bit of maneuverability, but that's the way I'd guess they'd change it. Hey, if they don't change it and they leave it, or if they even buff it, that would be pretty amazing. A few other little bits they've mentioned is this incredible new model is tremendously versatile and comes with plenty of weapon options. We've seen lots of weapon options already, but maybe it'll come with the power fist as well. And also 4 separate heads. And we've obviously only seen 2 of the head sculpts now. So interesting, there's 2 more that we haven't seen yet. On top of this, even though it is a Cadian style Castellan, they have made it clear that this can be used with any Astra Militarum army, Cadian or otherwise. Even Deathcore Krieg and Castellan Jungle Fighters need battlefield command. So it's not locked into Cadians. It's not only going to buff Cadians. He might not even have the shock troop keyword. He might be wearing Cadian style sort of equipment and armor, but he certainly is not just for Cadians. He is going to be buffing all of the different regiments. That's really good. Making it regiment agnostic just makes it much more tactically flexible. One other thing that I think is really interesting is that they mentioned that Castellans are competent fighters in their own right. With a panoply of powerful equipment at their disposal, many of our traitors tried to gut the head off from the Imperial Beast, only to receive a power fist to the face for their trouble. So even though we haven't seen the power fist loadout in the preview pictures, it seems clear to me that you will be able to give this guy a power fist, which is pretty cool. And interesting how they say that he's able to be quite good at fighting. I mean, right now, the best model that we've got in the guard for close combat, best sort of officer model, is the Lord Commissar. He hits on a weapon skill of 2+. So I would suspect that this guy is probably also going to have at least weapon skill 2+, and he might have weapon skill 2+ and ballistic skill 2+. That would be kind of interesting if they buffed up guard officers that way. It'd be interesting if like platoon commanders / command squads have got weapon skill, ballistic skill 3+, and this guy gets weapon skill, ballistic skill 2+. That would indicate to me that what they're probably going to do is have just a single rank of commissar rather than having commissar and lord commissar, and then lord commissar will probably be some sort of points upgrade like you get sort of for like chapter master and high thens and all that kind of stuff for the regular commissar. That gives him some extra buffs and might also increase his fighting capability. Kind of interesting they just mentioned him as a fighter. I mean, from my bitter experience, any guard commander isn't that great in combat. You know, you can expect them to be able to take on like an intercessor or two, but that's about it. I would not expect this guy to be able to go toe-to-toe with any other sort of main character. Not even something like a Space Marine captain. I wouldn't expect him to be able to go toe-to-toe unless that Space Marine captain is equipped with literally basically a bolt pistol and a chainsword, and this guy's got, you know, a plasma pistol and a power fist. It's interesting to me that they seem to be giving guard officers a real leg up in melee. When you think about it, the command squad had a sergeant bodyguard style model with a power fist and also an officer with a power sword. And now we're seeing a Castellan who also seems to be fairly good at combat. I'm not against that. I actually kind of like the idea of your officers being able to get into fights and actually not just be purely supporting characters, but able to have those epic moments. I mean, it's cool that guard officers are a little bit different to other characters in other armies where they do mainly focus on buffing. That kind of feels a little bit more realistic. But there's always those epic moments when you want your plucky guard officer to take down that Chaos Lord, you know, take down that, you know, dastardly Tau Fire Warrior in combat. It just feels cool being able to actually let rip with the chainsword and the power sword. So I'm not against it in any way, shape or form. I'm actually totally for it. But I wouldn't get anyone's hopes up. I think the best you're going to be able to do is actually basically turn your officers into more like bully units where you can punch down on things like Fire Warriors and Grots and maybe even like Orcs and Cultists and stuff like that. But I don't think you're going to be able to take on a War Boss or a Baden anytime soon. And then the last little bits that they mentioned is that there's going to be join us next week for more Ash Minotaur reveals as we continue a month-long celebration of humanity's finest. It's great that GW has finally acknowledged that the Imperial Guard are the true Emperor's finest. And also, interesting to say, join us next week. I would have expected them to have loads of reveals going on throughout the week, but maybe they've sort of released a few things a little bit early to get to sort of wet our whistles, and then we're going to get the full week of previews when the Codex gets a little bit closer to release. But that covers everything for today. Let me know what you're thinking down in the comment section below. Are you going to pick one of these models up? Are you going to kit bash it to try and make it look a little bit more like your regiment? What are you going to do? What do you think? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed today's video, then please give it a like. It makes a huge difference and boosts it with the all-knowing yet mysterious YouTube algorithm. And if you never want to miss an episode and make sure you see more of these deep dives and my live streams, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you've really enjoyed today's video and you want to go the extra mile when it comes to supporting the channel, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. It is thanks to the generous support of my channel members, of my patrons, that I am now able to do Mordy and Glory full-time. I'm able to get these deep dive videos out much quicker and be on the cutting edge. It does make a massive difference. So a huge thank you to all of my channel members and Patreons. And I just want to take a moment now to do a shout out to the latest people who have signed up. So a massive thank you to Ivan Terashinka, Pac-Man, Bloodtree, Jacob Plum, Zia Thass, Jake Raven, Frost and Fists, Jean-Luc LaRusso, Graham Lowe, Krug Dog, Zeal, David Hamlet, Doc Dragon, The Traitor Guardsman, Eomer Sangualobo, Bryn, John Hilton O'Brien, Josh Y, Klitch Games, Funny Soup, Devin Johnson, Robert Miles, Alex Holt, Coaster72, Far Beyond the Stars, Werewolf, Sinclair Haddo, LT Jojock9, Ali803, and Sylvester of Terror. Thank you guys for doing your part. Thank you for joining the Mordy and Glory channel. Also want to do a shout out to the latest Patreon supporters as well. So a big thank you to Tech Guy 122, Hound the Red, Bradley J, Christopher Scott, Moon Prune, 700th Black Templar, Waiting for Something to Happen, and Nick Hooper. Thank you guys for your ongoing Patreon support. Also want to have a quick special mention, big thank you to Bazantophile and also to Dominic Griffin for increasing their channel Patreon support and becoming company commanders. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These guys are the War Masters. They have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to supporting the Mordy and Glory channel. So a massive thank you to Navy Veteran, Philip French, Ross Miller, Tequal, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Swordfish Trombone, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and of course, August Varney. Massive thank you to all of you guys. Your very generous Patreon support makes a huge, huge difference. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.